It's like how great, how easy it is to sing that kind of song. How great thou art when you had a good week. Like God has blessed me. Everything's great. But then on the other end of that, if it's not been a good week, that's usually not the first place we go. How great thou art. Now, if I've struggled through, if I've drugged through, like just like trying to get to Friday so I don't have to go to work, all of a sudden that how great thou art is hard to find. Jesus tells a story in Matthew chapter 7 about two families and two men. And they're both building a house, but one's building his house on a solid foundation. And that's the theme of the story is what are you building on? He builds his house on the rock. And if you go through the story, the storms come, house stands, other person, neighbor, somebody he's building his house on the sand. He don't have the foundation. It's not solid, and the rain comes, and his house crumbles, his house falls. It doesn't say that like, hey, was that immediate? Did that take time? I think there is the drip effect is what I call it there. Sometimes it don't fall all at one time. It just starts the process. And that's the case in most of our lives. Bad doesn't all of a sudden happen. It usually is some kind of drip effect. But here's the thing that we miss in that story. We always talk about that, like build your house on the rock, have a solid foundation. But here's the secondary theme. Who's it rain on? The guy who's really not very smart and builds his house on sand, it rains on him, but it rained just as much on the neighbor with the good foundation. It was just as stormy over at his house as it was here. The reality is that Jesus told his apostles this: in this world, you will have trouble. In this world, you're going to have some struggles. But be at peace, I have overcome the world. We're starting this study of the book of James, and we're going to read all the way through it. So we want to challenge you to read the book. Write in your Bible. Take notes as you read through the book. But we're going to look at 1 through 12, and just to note how James starts out the book is like there's going to be some problems. And he doesn't start out the book with, here's how to avoid the problems, because that's most of what we do, isn't it? Like, oh, I'm going to be in trouble. I'm going to avoid that person. Like, I'm probably not going to try to talk to Kim after church. I'm going to avoid the situation where it could be a struggle. I'm going to hide from the uncomfortable conversation. But in reality, rain is going to hit. It's going to rain on the good. It's going to rain on the bad. There's no way. Basically, we're caught in the storm. From Genesis chapter 3, that's when the clouds rolled in, until eternity, there's going to be storms in our lives. And it's not so much whether or not we have them, because we're all going to have them. It's how we're going to respond to them. So James chapter 1, starting with verse 3, I lied, verse 2. Starting with verse 2. Consider it great joy, or some translations have pure joy. In other words, there's nothing mixed into it. It is whole, it is complete, it is pure. Consider it great or pure joy, my brothers and sisters, whenever you experience various trials. Not if you experience, but when. Because here's the thing that James knew. You're going to experience them. You're going to go through some struggles. Yours may look a little different than mine, and that's okay. But at some point in our life, we're going to have some relationship problems. It may be a spouse, it may be a best friend, it may be a sibling, it may be your neighbor's dog hangs out too much in your yard. We don't know what that's going to look like, but the reality is you're going to have some relationship problems. Some of us go through financial issues, and when we have money problems, and when things get tight, everything gets a little crazy. Some of us struggle with addictions, and we don't know why, but we do. And like, how does that affect the other relationships in my life? Some of us gossip about people, and we just can't be quiet when we should be. Some of us listen and cheer on the gossip, and we giggle and share it with another person. Some of us are self-righteous, and we don't think we ever do anything wrong, and that's our struggle in and of itself. But the reality is, we all are going to face some kind of struggle. You're going to have a trial. Your response is more important than the trial itself. How you respond to it will dictate whether or not you will grow through it or whether or not you'll surrender to it. Because it's coming. I can't hide from it. So I need to prepare for it. James says, consider it great joy or pure joy when you experience various, and most of us are going to experience more than one. Because this is the why. Because in that struggle, God can do great things. He can use your trials to grow your faith. He can use your trials to prepare you for something that He has planned for you in the future. I just want us to think through some of those people who struggled maybe throughout the Bible and what God did through them. You know, David's taken lunch to his brothers. He has no intentions of getting in a fight with a giant. Daniel's just getting down to pray one evening. He didn't expect to spend the night with a group of lions. Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego just decided they were going to stand up when everybody else was kneeling down. The next thing they know, they're in a fiery furnace. Over and over and over again. God uses people in the midst of a struggle, a trial, a temptation to do great things. And I think it's because of this. Because when we are weak, He is able to show His strength in us and through us. If I'm standing on my own feet, I'm typically not leaning on Him. But when Brad's having a hard time and he don't know what to do, all of a sudden at his lowest, he'll decide to look up. Consider it pure joy, my brothers and sisters, when you find yourself in various trials, struggles, pain, because God's about to do something in your life. And James gives us the details of this. Now, James knows this. Most likely, this is a half-brother of Jesus. So, he's been through the struggle. Could you imagine being Jesus' little brother? That's bad. You know, how you live up to that? Talking about living in the shadow of somebody. But he watched his little brother claim to be, and he was. But the physical aspect of before the resurrection, Jesus claiming to be the Son of God. I mean, there's a point where James himself goes to get his brother. Oh, your brother's Jesus, that guy. After the resurrection, he comes to faith and he becomes a leader in the church at Jerusalem. We're all in church with. Now they're getting hauled off and killed, persecuted. And that threat is at all times. In the midst of that, he writes this: be filled with joy because he's about to do something. What's he going to do? If we look at the text, of their testing of your faith, it produces endurance. And then endurance, we get perseverance. From that perseverance, then we get maturity, being complete in God. God wants to do something in His people. way we'll lean on Him when we're unable to see. Because He don't do that. But in the midst, He will to grow you. So what's our response? Most of the time, when I'm going through a hard time, there's several things. There's the emotional, right? We're my emotional people. Like I just go through emotional tailspin. Things are just bad and like, We also have in us, we just shut down. I'm hiding when things go bad. I'm just like, I'm hiding. We got like this. We had a dog one time. We in the garage door. He was just like, he wasn't really going anywhere. He's just, and some people, they get in stress and trial, but they're doing everything. Not accomplishing anything, they're just running. It's a big part in what are we going to get out of it. And if your response is emotional, or if it is rational, or if it's the one question you got to ask is, where are you turning? Because the next few verses, 5 talks about seeking wisdom, and a lot of times when we read the Bible, we chunk this part. Say, okay, if you don't know what to do, if you're sitting in the context of being in a struggle, I don't know what. In the middle of this. Here's what we usually emotion. We'll go talk to a friend, but prayer, like we seek wisdom from God. I want to know what to do is different than having the wisdom to be able to do it. Okay? Everybody grab. Knowledge and wisdom are two different things. Knowledge is trivia. I know the answer. I know what to do. Wisdom is knowing how to effectively use what you know to do what it is that you need to do. I don't know how to apply what I know. Wisdom. And James here, like when you're in the midst of this struggle, it isn't just about the knowledge, but how do you use the knowledge? And he says that we seek God. In the midst of struggle, if any of you lacks wisdom, I don't know which way to turn, I don't know what to do, I don't know where to go, he should ask God, who gives to all generously and ungrudgingly, and it will be given to him, with the context of verse 6. But let him do it in faith. God is going to hear your prayers. He's going to answer your prayers. He may not answer them the way you want them answered. No is an answer. It may not be, it's usually not the answer I want to hear. It may not be the answer you want. But no is an answer. Wait, you're not ready for that, is an answer. Yes is also an answer. But we often don't seek wisdom. We just want knowledge. And not how to do it, but just what. Let him who is struggling, let him who is, or her who is having a hard time, seek for wisdom. I love how Paul writes in Philippians 4. You can turn there if you want to. Philippians 4, 6, and 7. Paul writes to the church. Now, in context, when Paul writes, he is in prison. He is imprisoned when he writes the letter to the church at Philippi. The church at Philippi is probably the first place where he was publicly persecuted for being a follower of Jesus. So he knows trials. He knows struggles. He knows pain. And in the midst of that, he writes Philippians, and we'll go to chapter 4, verse 6. Don't worry or do not be anxious about anything. He's imprisoned when he writes, do not be anxious about anything. Don't worry. He's writing this as he's attached to a prison guard. Don't worry about anything, but in everything through prayer and petition, with thanksgiving, present your request to God. I just want us to point out this. James and Paul here in Philippians. Don't worry, don't be anxious. Not in some situations, but in every situation, good and bad. Seek God through prayer and petition. Not just prayer. Prayer and petition. With what? With thanksgiving. And sometimes we forget what God has done when we're struggling through a trial. Time and time again through the Old Testament, and especially as God's leading his people through the wilderness, getting them into the promised land, Moses had to stop and say, remember what God did here. I just want, if you're going through a hard time right now, you're struggling with an issue currently, like right now, I don't know what to do. I don't know where to go. I just want to encourage you to stop this week and think through and maybe get a notebook or some Post-it notes or something. Where has God showed up in your past? Where has God blessed you before? Remind yourself of the good things that God has done in your life so that in the midst of the bad times, you can relive that. I had a minister who told me when I first got started in ministry, he called it an encouragement folder. Keep an encouragement folder in your desk. And I'm like, what? He's like, when you get good stuff, put it in this folder because you're going to get bad stuff. You're going to get an email one day and somebody's going to say, that sermon was horrible. And you're going to say, you know what, you're right, it was. You need some encouragement. You need a folder that you can go back to when it's a dumpster fire that you can rely on. And most of us are that way. We need to pull back into that file and like, what has God done? Let me remind myself how faithful he is, how good he is, how much he's blessed me. And then I want you to go forward. Days are way ahead of you. Because God tells us about eternity. And I believe, and I say that, like, I've already started into eternity. I'm just on this side of it. My best days are on the other side of it. And I'm not looking forward to transitioning from this side to that side. I don't know that, I'm not like, ooh, let's do that today. But I know when that happens, the best life experience that Brad's going to have is face to face with his Creator in heaven. So I in the midst of that struggle, like, God, what have you done? How you've blessed me? Where have I experienced the good things? And look at the promise that's in front of me. David reminds us of that. Can you imagine being little David walking down the hill with big giant Goliath out there waiting on him? There had to be an element of fear in there somewhere. But David says that weeping or mourning, it may last a night. In other words, it's limited. It's temporary. But joy comes in the morning. Joy comes in the morning. God's grace is eternal. God's grace is going to outlast any struggle that Satan's going to throw at you, and he is going to throw. God's grace is going to surround. In the midst of that struggle, you may not feel it because we're all going to get wet. It's going to rain on the good and the bad, but God's grace never leaves. He loves He never forsakes. He never abandons. And the psalmist says in Psalm 30, we may have that struggle, but joy comes in the morning. So when you find yourself in the middle of that, I don't know what to do, I'm struggling. Just know, Satan, our enemy, is like a roaring lion, seeking whom he may devour. And we don't wrestle with just the powers of this world, Ephesians 5, but the powers and the princes of darkness. And if we quit wrestling, we lose. Don't give up, because joy will come. In the midst of that struggle, whatever yours is, let me say this on a sidebar too. Can we just not beat each other up because our struggles are different? Can we as a church just agree to quit doing that? Like, I struggle with something that you don't struggle with, so I'm worse or not as bad or whatever. Like, we're all messed up. Let's just own it. Satan came in Genesis 3, and we fell for it. And we're paying for it. And he's crouched down. I mean, y'all, we've seen the videos, haven't we? The lion out in the plains, and he's crouched just below grass level, looking at the little gazelle who just wants to drink of water. I mean, he ain't bothering nobody. He just wants to drink of water. But the lion is crouched down, sneaking in. That Satan is waiting for you to be distracted so he can attack. At your weakest, he'll hit you the hardest. When you think everything's great, he's just below grass level waiting to pounce. When he pounces, just ask yourself this. What might God be doing in the middle of my struggle? Where might God be leading me? What changes might he be looking to spur on in me? I know this from being a coach. I mean, I coached wrestling for a lot of years. And we would break these young men's bodies down, like in practices that were hours long, and they're sacrificing, making weight, cutting weight, lifting weights, running, doing dumb stuff. Yeah, all for the purpose that they would build up stronger. And I love to watch, like, you get this little dude come in, and he's scrawny and skinny, and he can't do nothing, and then in 2 years, he looks like a totally different person. Because in order to build the muscle, we had to tear it down. In the midst of your struggle, you feel like you're getting beat up and you're getting tore down, but ask yourself this question: what might God be doing in me in the midst of this? Where might he be leading me? What does he want me to learn? And I would encourage you, as you ask those questions, that you would seek wisdom from him in those times that are uncertain. This is in the Bible somewhere. Look for it. Get you a concordance. Are you struggling with something? I remember as a young Christian, when I was in the Marine Corps, writing down the physical struggles I had, the sins that I had a hard time with. And I remember I had a Bible that had a concordance in the back of it. Some of them do, some of them don't. And I looked those things up, and I wrote all of the verses down that dealt with what I had problems with. And I wrote them down. And then eventually that became not just my struggles, but what I believed in. Like, seek wisdom from God and his word in the trials that you have. Don't just ask your best friend who's probably struggling with the same thing that you're struggling with. Now, you need that accountability, but seek wisdom from God because he knows the answers. And in the midst of seeking that wisdom, just know this: your circumstances do not determine your identity. Your external environment. Your external environment does not have to control your internal temperament. I've said this from the stage multiple times, and I think we got to own this right here, church. Today is the day that the Lord has made. I will. That is a choice you make. It is not today is a good day, so I will. Today is perfect, so I will. It is today is a day. Today is a day. If it's a bad day, I'm going to choose to rejoice and be glad in it. If it's a great day, I'm going to rejoice in it. If it's like hostile, I'm going to make a decision. Today is the day that God has given me. I will rejoice and be glad in it. And if anybody should, it should be people who are following Jesus. We should be the most excited people walking the face of the earth because we know where we're going. Heaven awaits. I don't have time to be sad. I don't have to go through that mess. I choose to. Now, are there going to be times that kind of knock you off balance? Absolutely. You're going to be sad? Yes. Are you going to get mad? Yes. Jesus went through all those emotions. But don't let them control you. Don't let them define you. Don't let them become your identity. Today is the day that the Lord has made. Let all of us rejoice and be glad in it. Let me pray for us. God, we thank you for loving us. You've blessed us beyond measure. And I say this, and I say this for me alone.